Humanity has long since left the Earth. The people of the old world abandoned their dying planet before a new ice age could end their species. While most settled elsewhere, colonizing the galaxy, some were left behind, gazing at the stars. When it's not snowing, they can be seen clearly. Living in constant bliss and lost all violent tendencies, those dots in the night sky are but light emitted by those people's civilizations. Agni and Luna are among the sons of those left to fight the cold on Earth. Heavier each year, the snow has corrupted the heart of men who, prey of famine and madness, beg for God's merciful flames, wishing to join his warm paradise, despite obeying their worst instincts. Cannibalism, slavery, phobias and violence are weapons of the fittest. In such a dystopia, the kingdom of Behendog, sworn enemy of the Ice Witch, is the ideal of freedom created and ruled by God himself, destination of Agni's journey, who brutally slays his way through all the king's troops and in little time gains a companion in Sun, a kid sharing the name given by an old language to the biggest star shining in the sky. Sun quickly grows fond of his savior, believing Agni to be God, as he was the one to answer his prayers, and the immortal flames only support his belief. But the matter is of little interest to Agni, whose only thought in the last 8 years of his life has been avenging his dead sister Luna. No matter how freezing, the children used to spend every day together, warming up their bodies through their love for each other. In particular, Agni would share his regenerating flesh as food. He would tell Luna of the times bathing in the river was still possible, of when green was still the dominant color across the land. He'd promised her to travel the world together when the worm would return. Lastly, he'd promised Luna to live. Agni cannot die. Not until the man who took his life fuel perishes by his hand. The flame's pain is only bearable when he thinks about that man, filling his heart with hatred, an explosive feeling Agni's cultivated for nearly a decade, that seems to be slowly making him lose sight of himself, the more ashes and blood are left behind his path. Lost between memories and hallucinations due to his physical and mental state, Agni finally gets closer to Behendog, followed by Sun, who keeps his cruelty at bay with the typical innocence and silliness of a child. Though the kid isn't simply a key character for comic relief. More importantly, he helps Agni preserve his humanity, as they start caring for each other with time, until the impossible happens, and Luna appears. Agni is naturally shocked by seeing his sister alive. She must have regenerated and forgotten her memories, he thinks. Unfortunately, that one is a completely different person, who happens to share Luna's exact looks and voice, going by the name of Judah. Incidentally, it should be added that the world of Fire Punch is rich of blessings. While some may create iron or electricity, ice, a few may even be able to read one's mind, but the most complicated aspect of its power system is surely balancing the protagonist. After all, Agni is not only mortal, but also able to use an uncounterable power thanks to Dama's flames. The author's solution to stop the main character from automatically winning every fight, as he's done in the initial chapters, is Judah. While confusing Agni and the reader too about her identity, she also reveals the innate weakness of those like her blessed by regenerative abilities. Being beheaded, although it may not be enough in exceptional cases. Having recognized the owner of those flames and ordered the soldiers to shoot at Agni's head to slow the regeneration, the woman decides to bring him to Behendog and summon a certain someone for explanation. In the meantime, Sun is taken away and enslaved in the city's undergrounds, where his electricity blessing will be exploited to produce energy until the end of his days. Between one bullet and the other, memories of Luna flash through Agni's mind, the person he had been thinking about for so long. The sister he believed dead is standing next to him, but as the dumb cigarette she throws at him catches fire, among the tears, Agni realizes that Luna died a long time ago. At least, an old acquaintance is still alive. It's been 8 long years of despair and anguish. Finally, Doma stands in front of Agni, who's back on his feet, having taken advantage of the soldier's distraction. But something's off. The man looks troubled. He doesn't seem to remember killing any Luna, and asks if it was really him to murder her. If this wasn't enough, he even begs to be forgiven. Enraged, Agni rushes up to Doma, never been closer to tasting revenge, but he's easily beaten. A few moments after ordering the man to stay in Behendorg, possibly because of his mental illness, Judah, as the city's leader, gathers all of the regeneration-blessed soldiers present, even the great hero Simon, to travel to sea. The mission is to throw Agni's head in the ocean, but somebody else has also gotten on the train. Tagata, a cinephile who's taken a liking to Agni because of his particular body and flaming dick, wishing to film him as her movie's protagonist. Tagata is quite the character. The first thing she does is record a poor girl brought along on the train being abused, but on second thought she chooses to save Nenato, the girl's name, on her offer to be the cameraman. Tagata effortlessly kills everybody, showing off sick moves learned from the best action movies. Finally, she confronts Judah, who ends up posing no threat to her, in classic Fujimoto style by mixing action with comedy. Even if entertaining, Tagada seems to be another problem for this story. Just like Agni, being overpowered will compromise the story's suspense, but this is an issue that will brilliantly be solved by the author in due time. Freed Agni, and after playing around for a little while with Judah's head, Tagada promises the man to train him in order to become strong enough to beat Doma, on the condition that he joins her as fireman. In fact, the woman is moved by Agni's backstory. The revenge motive and Judah looking exactly like his dead sister sound like amazing elements for the film. Basically, all she has to do is write the catharsis. One thing's been made clear though, Judah is not Luna. Not only did she state that during her 130 years of life she has only gone by Judah, she even told Agni to die. If any more doubts still persisted on Agni's mind, they must be gone by now. Unlike Sun's hope, the kid is once again praying to his god for salvation, and those around him have started growing interested in Agni's tale, seeking the flames of a warm paradise. While the training arc is occasion to further develop the power system, thanks to Tagata's 300 years of experience, Fujimoto deviates from the usual battle shonen formula seen thousands of times by alternating Agni's physical training with English lessons. And of course, it's only curse words that Tagata teaches. The head is the weak point. Penis. Focusing heavily on regenerating a body part will accelerate the process. Dick. But as mentioned before, it would be too easy to defeat Doma when there is someone like Tagata on Agni's side, and Fujimoto knows this very well. The solution is having her betray Agni. When she visits Judah in Behendorg, Tagata shares her plan to kill the main character, as she's shocked and disappointed to see Doma in no condition to fight, much less to work as a compelling villain for the movie. A frightening group of criminals taken from the city's prison will work better. Daida. He possesses the blessing of making his muscles stronger. He killed several women who weren't slaves, as well as 30 soldiers. Fugaitai. A blessed who can manipulate all iron within his field of vision. He killed hundreds of soldiers in an attempt to take over Behendorg. Alu. He can manipulate the wind so he can fly. He shaved the faces of 17 children, just for fun. Behendorg's battle will decide everything, but everything's been decided already. It's about time to end this farce and spoil the movie. There is something Tagada says shortly after preparing everything for the fight, something Judah knows all too well and is even relieved to hear. There is no ice witch, and there is no god. The world, all the acting are ending soon. Everything that has been said until now is but a lie, an illusion, covering what Fire Punch really is. There is no world building or lore that matter. No training or balanced power system, no revenge plot or villain of any kind that will ever be relevant to such a story. It's all an act, and you have been fooled. In Fire Punch, Tatsuki Fujimoto follows Agni's journey in an attempt to find fuel for his life, a reason to burn for. Despite desiring death, Agni is ironically unable to die, and the further his journey takes him, the more lives his flames consume, the more his sister's last word devours him, making him question the sense of life. Although this is not something the author would agree on, at least for the first half of the manga, as Fujimoto likes to deceive and mislead the reader into thinking that Fire Punch is a revenge story instead, focused on defeating villain after villain while getting stronger, when physical strength in reality is not what Agni is in need of. The truth in Fire Punch is much like its world, covered under a thick blanket of absurdity and snow. Many are the techniques utilized to trick the audience and ensure the manga to be initially perceived as an ordinary and conventional battle shonen, though a few hints of the mangaka's real intentions are present, even if subtly. With his tendency to scatter throughout the chapters interesting information and details on the world and its history, what the author accomplishes is the fabrication of a cosmos that will later be entirely scrapped and go to waste despite its potential, because in the end, irrelevant and only useful as a distraction from the real plot. So that all the humanity left the Earth and can be seen shine the night sky, or that apparently, hundreds of years before the new Ice Age, reading books and watching movies were prohibited, let alone making them, allowing the speculation that the old world might have been united under an authoritarian regime. Theory Togata confirms when he mentions a certain 23rd century cultural revolution, revealing that justice, equality and peace were affirmed values at the time. Or again, that blessings used to be shared by everybody back then and not just a chosen few. These occasional little pieces of lore and world building are the essence of Fujimoto's art of deception. By giving small details, he makes the world breathe, but in the end, all he says or does has only the purpose to hide the real narrative. It's all an act which continues even at the end of each volume, where notes on Fujimoto's private life can be read. As fascinating as these facts may be, that this fireproof cloth is from the 6th generation, that sun is a word from an old language, that Behendog uses a train to retrieve salt from sea, expression of the technological level of the world, or that so many people come from far away to join Agnism, the religion worshipping Agni after Behendog's fall. It's all artificially meant to expand the world and render it realistic, but nothing more than that, while offering an interesting case of meta-narrative, because reality and lies are what the story and characters are all made of. If the substance of everything is a lie, so is its form, the narrative in short, forcing the reader to complete and comprehend the manga along with the actual writer. Both of us like works that take the audience to a place they've never seen before, even ones where the genre changes halfway through the work. I believe Fire Punch is one of those stories. A fairly large part of the criteria when we evaluate a work is occupied by whether it has a feeling different from other works, or a new way of showing something. I get really excited when I see something where I think, wow, I've never seen this before. However, it is not enough to simply be different. It's necessary to have a sense of realism that makes you think that the world really exists. Fujimoto-sensei's work has a magnificent scale to the whole story, and the development will change from one to another, but in the end, it will result in concrete, familiar emotions. That's where I perceive realism. Popular works like Parasite and Shiguru are similar in this area. I love fictions with a dark universe. That's what I wanted for Fire Punch. I also like more joyful works, but dark ones often touch me more deeply. For example, those dealing with the end of the world. Watching a light-hearted movie can entertain me in the moment, but a dark movie that doesn't amuse me will still leave its mark on me. As an example, I love Evangelion. When I first watched the third movie of the new saga, Rebuild of Evangelion, I didn't find it that interesting, but I think that its incredible ending will be engraved in me until I die. What's better, a wow effect that is quickly forgotten, or a work that makes you wonder and intrigues you in the long term? It's this last effect that I wanted to create in the heart of the reader of Fire Punch. Imitating stagnating battle shonen formulas is another technique used to deceive the reader. In the very first page, the Ice Witch is set up to be the final enemy, whose defeat will potentially undo her curse on the world. Shockingly, her very existence is then debunked by Togata, who's lived for 300 years and would surely know. But Fujimoto wouldn't let any character ruin his work that easily, so after the training arc, when Agni reaches Behendog and is unable to find Doma, who is supposedly dead in the prisons, burned by the flames spreading unstoppably through the entire city, someone appears right at the climax of Agni's confrontation with Judah, the root cause of Luna's death, and it's none other than the Ice Witch herself. By telling a lie, only to admit the truth later, and then contradict that with visual proof of the witch's existence, Fujimoto creates a state of confusion in the audience and in his narrative too, where anything that happens or the characters say can no longer be distinguished as true or false, and this dramatic unpredictability to make the real plot elusive is his objective. That everything is fictional is also emphasized by Togata, who makes a movie out of this exceptionally well-written lie. But in Fire Punch, lies eventually turn true, and cyclically, the truth becomes false. The Ice Witch later saves Judah from being killed by Agni, and a few chapters later, Surya, her real name, reveals that the villain does not exist. She has never existed. Ironically, She even looks like Luna. But the reader is very highly thought of by Fujimoto. A writer putting his trust in the intelligence of the readers will always leave hints about their actual intentions, and if what they're telling is true or not. So by having the eye switch waver when answering Agni's questions about why she ruined the world, in that hesitation, it is possible to see her lies. And a lie is also the revenge motive, which is but a plot device to push the story forward. Even with Doma's death, the reader, used to classic battle shonen stories, will still expect the defeat of the major villain, the Eye Switch, at least initially, when the lying narrative is at its strongest. It's a recurring episode for conventional manga to have the protagonist and villain meet again to hype the final clash between them in the endgame. But when Agni sees Doma after many years, Fujimoto shows him weak, troubled. The character asks for forgiveness even. This is not the usual re-encounter with an old villain responsible for ruining the main character's life. Not at all. It's not epic, and Doma looks nothing like he used to. Even Togata doesn't see him fit to oppose the hero in the movie. He's visibly ill, and the dialogue with Judah only confirms this character to be hiding more than what's shown. Doma is only a pretext to give Agni a reason to live, but little does he know the end of his chase is literally eons away. The character's concerning appearance is a hint of the real plot, and his death is definitely not the destination of Agni's journey, which is confirmed when Doma does die, and there is no catharsis to be felt, nothing that rebalances the passionate excesses aroused in the soul of the viewer by the tragic representation. That's how Aristotle describes catharsis, because it was not that person who killed Luna, though this is a topic to be explored later regarding the reason why this character even exists, specifically for the theme of education. Fire Punch initially follows the path shared by many battle shonen manga, where supporting characters are introduced along the way and several villains are set up as obstacles, like Behemdolg, with its main bosses being Doma, Judah, the King, God, even the Eye Switch as a third party, but everything ultimately serves as a source of more pain for Agni. When Behemdolg is destroyed and thousands of civilians die, it's in this mirror that his reflection shows him the truth of what he's become: death. And yet, before Togata spoils the plot, it is literally said by Simon, the great hero, that nothing is real. Before taking the train to throw Agni's head into the sea, he tells Judah how terrible she's at acting, seeing her bless a boy thanks to the voice of God she claims to hear. Details such as these do not matter when given in the moment, but only much later when looking back with the bigger picture in mind. Still, what's important is that those hints are present. Hints that God was never real, same for the Eye Switch, that Doma was not the villain. Which begs the question, who's the enemy here? What is Fire Punch about? The series is marked by the theme of revenge. What do you think about it? I think what matters in a revenge story is how it ends, and also what the main character will do once his revenge is accomplished. The main character of Fire Punch can be surprising. He has been lonely since the tragedy that killed his loved ones. He is as cold as the world around him, yet covered in flames and violent, cursed, and condemned to suffer. How did such a hero germinate in your mind? It's certainly my masochist side who wanted to see the main character abused, but since Fire Punch is serialized on Shonen Jump Plus, I'd like to create something rare to see on a magazine. Something anti-jump. I don't know what idea my readers have on what Fire Punch is, but I'd like to insert taboo elements, for example, religion. Whether the themes are positive or negative, I want to write something that is unusual for a manga. I would watch many dramas while drawing, and I'd happen to think that, compared to the action, the drama was the most important part, precisely because the ending and catharsis are vital in a manga. My favorite action movie is The Raid. Then, I also really like Kitano Takeshi's films, because they always manage to surprise you and make you think that they will end up in one way, and then change the cards on the table. In any case, it would be difficult to replicate in a manga. I have the feeling that what I'm proposing to jump today is completely abnormal. On the other hand, Fujimoto's lie prevents the revenge story from lacking tension, and it's all thanks to following the rules from more conventional manga. When the author illustrates the power system and the wide variety of blessings, or when he reveals the inherent weakness of the regeneration power, what he is aiming at is balancing the immortal and overpowered main character. In fact, by offering counterplay to Agni's power, Fujimoto keeps the suspense of the story alive. But in reality, even this does not matter, and the striking example is the usual training arc. The English lessons alternated with it end up overshadowing the physical training. And while the power system is more deeply explored, it's all a brilliant joke. It is clear then that every event in Fire Punch has a secondary consequence, which happens to be the most important one in the majority of cases. Again, the fall of Behendog shouldn't be viewed as the simple defeat of an oppressive kingdom, rather as the rise of Agnism among the rescued slaves, and of course, as the worsening of Agni's depression, slowly coming to realize that nothing and nobody will ever bring back Luna, but hatred is the only thing that keeps him burning. I really enjoy manga where you can tell what will happen next, and in Fire Punch, the developments after Tagada appears aren't something you would expect in a shonen manga, but I really like that kind of thing. It makes you go, wait, what happened to the premise? Some people like that, while others think it lacks focus, but it's the same idea either way. Depends on whether you enjoy the suspense of not knowing what will happen next, or if you want a more stable foundation. I don't know about other people, but I like it. And on top of that, everything does come together around Volume 4 into a solid direction. Wow, that makes me so happy. I've always wanted to write a manga that's like a Korean movie. There's this movie called The Chaser, where the main character chases after the villain, but 30 minutes in, he catches him. This is supposed to happen at the end of the movie, so you keep wondering what will happen next. A lot of people say that in Korean movies they can't tell what the director is thinking, but actually, if you watch until the end, you'll get it. I wanted to make something like that. Actually, I'd planned to have the conclusion for the first part in Volume 3, so I wanted to get to 3 volumes. I'm glad that I could go further. Volume 3 is when you see hints of the secrets of the world, so I thought that it would keep going for quite a bit. With an orthodox plot you mostly know what to expect, but Fire Punch is interesting because it betrays those expectations. Even in Volume 4, you can't tell if Agni or Togata is the main character. They might even share the role. It feels like you're mixing together completely different elements, and it all comes together in Volume 4. When you're reading Fire Punch you think, I wonder if this will happen. But that turns into, what's even happening with this manga? I think that's what makes Fire Punch interesting. When Agni arrives in Behemdog, at the conclusion of the training arc, he suddenly decides to stop at the prison cells where thousands of slaves are held. In Tagada's movie, as he frees them, it looks like he's improvising and acting out of character, since revenge is the only thing he should care about, both considering the main role he's playing and the actual cold person he's become. In the end, all Agni could do was pretend and act as an avenger to live on. He knows that killing Dama will not bring Luna back, but hating that person has been the only way to distract himself from the painful truth, and eventually Agni forgot he was acting. Who was the real him? He wonders. As he saves the prisoners, he remembers who he used to be, a kid unable to forgive bad deeds or accept death. From this point on, Fire Punch is no more Togata's story, which is marked by the fact that while Togata calls him Fireman to resume acting according to the script, the hallucinations of his younger self scream his real name instead. It's time for Agni to stop acting and go back to who he was, not a hero nor the main character, just Agni. But a legitimate question rises: why is he still living? Death would put an end to all the ill feelings in his heart. He'd finally be able to see Luna again. That's when he also remembers a certain fist bump, the one which celebrated an old promise, to travel the world together when the worm would be back. So, the Ice Witch is the perfect, natural enemy for Agni, the obstacle to Luna's happiness, his fuel. Even if Agni's sense of justice telling him not to accept a broken world is real motivation for the character, it conveniently matches that of conventional battle shonen protagonists, another case of the mangaka's art of deception, and common example in Fire Punch, where the truth is amusingly mixed in all the lies. Everybody likes ha-ha-haing, especially Tatsuki Fujimoto, seeing how originally he uses comedy in Fire Punch, from relieving tension to pushing the story forward, or even breaking with convention. While it's true that most events in this story are not what they seem, that's not the case for everything, so San peeing for an entire manga page is just what it looks like. A kid in the middle of a frozen world who can't hold it anymore. Other times though, there is much more to a simple joke. In the early chapters, when Agni and San are walking together to Behendolg, the kid feels like sharing something with his savior and god. It's his treasure. A delicacy so rare to come across that Agni should only take a lick on the most special days. It's sugar. Unfortunately, as he takes it out, the wind blows it away instantly. The scene expresses a form of realism through the rarity of sugar, so simply, yet so effectively thanks to the use of comedy. A similar occurrence happens when San calls a little dog a bear, a particularly funny moment considering that here he is about to be violated by said bear, not that he knows what sex is anyway. San's ridiculous confusion is symptom of the world's ignorance and justified by the rarity of those animals that have become food for man's survival. I'm always looking for contrasts in my story. When there is a moment of great despair, I always try to change the mood in the next scene. Each story needs those two aspects, a comedic side and a serious one. If a story doesn't have those two complementary elements, it can't stand on its own. We can just see it with the movie Parasite. The beginning is very funny, but the second part is more serious. All stories must have those two layers. If initially the character mainly used for comic relief is San, later it's Togata's turn, and the form of humor changes to a rather absurd kind. Togata is the type of character to be funny even when in tears. Like when his entire movie is ruined by Agni, who stops to rescue the slaves in Behendolg. The scene is hilarious because a normal person would root for the hero saving people. It's still with Togata that, in other instances, Fujimoto breaks the fourth wall through comedy. At the beginning of the training arc, wanting to know more in depth what it will be about, Agni asks for details, but Togata, who's always recording, cuts the conversation short because an info dump would be boring for the audience, basically skipping a step of this story, both for Agni, who receives no actual answer other than yada yada, and for the reader too. Another brilliant example regarding the breaking of the fourth wall can be found on board of Behendolg's train, where Togata does not seem very satisfied with how the movie is turning out. After sneaking into it, he easily overpowers the enemy. The problem is that the viewer might get bored, because literally everyone is gifted with the regeneration blessing. There is no variety, when he'd like some X-Men stuff instead, and he couldn't be more right. Everybody has the same power. Where is the diversity in the fights? Tagada clearly ignores what the audience had been told, that only regeneration-blessed soldiers were called in for the operation. Another funny moment happens during what immediately follows this part, but before the training. The classic beach episode. Only that comedy here is meant to break away from convention. So by having Tagada play and have fun with Juda's head after beating her and imitating drowning sounds, while Agni seems to drown too in despair because that may be his sister after all, Fujimoto insists on setting the absurd tone of the manga, diverging from anything the industry has seen in recent years. Similarly, the vulgarity expressed in the majority of scenes has the same goal, like all the curse words Tagada uses, with his favorite being dick, or all the times he mentions he wants to masturbate, or even when he's willing to watch Neneto get violated and just record for the movie. But as mentioned earlier, the best joke is the training arc itself. Fujimoto truly fooled his readers when he set up the story as one focused on revenge and power scaling, a joke that's often repeated in cases where villains are hyped to be a dangerous threat, but end up being defeated very easily, or even off-screen. In terms of character personality, the characters drawn by Fujimoto-sensei, like Tagata from Fire Punch, already include the gag element at the center of their persona. Therefore, you can create a situation where a serious act carried out by a character is perceived as a complete joke to others. Furthermore, I feel like the core of Fujimoto-sensei's work is the structure where the gag element of a character is the driving force of the story. Synonym of comedy is also a plot device. In Surya and Juda's conversation, a few days after the disaster of Behendolg, where the former appeared to Agni as the Ice Witch, Juda's fate is revealed. Being an evolved human, able to use all the blessings, even if dormant in her, she will grow into a tree of planetary size and lose her consciousness, while absorbing energy from the stars where new humanity is living, ultimately to warm up the Earth. Of course, every human but Agni and Surya will die, and that's precisely why it was important to confirm the Ice Witch's existence to him, so that he'd have a reason to keep on living, since Doma is believed dead after Behendolg's fall. Initially, Surya had started herself the process of arborification, but quickly stopped after remembering something very important: her fuel, the reason she cannot die. That is, to watch a new Star Wars movie. Since the previous saga had ended on a cliffhanger, her hope lies in recreating the practical conditions for humanity to continue this series. And so, none of the events that took place after her decision would have happened. In short, the Star Wars movie is an excuse to advance the plot, even though it sounds comical. Ironic that her plan ends up being implemented. Fujimoto-sensei, how did you come up with the story for Fire Punch? To be honest, I can't remember. What attracts you to the supernatural? I have no idea. Fire Punch is marked by the contrast between the theme of fire and the icy universe where extreme cold reigns. How did the idea of bringing together these two great opposites of ice and fire come about? Why this choice? It came to me while playing a puzzle game, where you have to find words by intuition. During the collapse of Behendolg, while Agni is still dealing with the Ice Witch rescuing Luna, the slaves are being escorted away by Tagata, who's still recording even though the movie is going off script, and a group of Agnists, followers of the new god. Just when Behendolg's troops catch up to take their fuel back, someone from far away debuts, having heard the tale of a god of fire appearing on Earth. This person only speaks English, but luckily, Tagada knows the language. And more importantly, those lessons in the training arc were not simple comic relief, since English is now going to be needed to communicate with the group following this bitch. That's what Tagada calls her. English lessons were then a plot device set on standby to advance the story later. What does humor bring to your story? It allows me to destabilize the point of view that the reader initially has on my story. My reference in the matter is the Korean film The Wailing, in which the viewer ends up not knowing by which hand he should follow this scenario, because of how much the director throws red herrings and covers tracks. I tried to attain the same effect in Fire Punch. For Fire Punch, you evoked in an interview the influence of the Korean film The Chaser by Na Hong-jin. Can you tell us about it? I like its gloomy atmosphere, and especially the unexpectedness of its plot. For Fire Punch, my editor and I went for that inspiration, as our story plays with the same idea of dramatic unpredictability. But my references in the matter of cinema are not restricted to the Korean one. The theme of cinema is omnipresent in Fire Punch. For what reason? In Fire Punch, I want every character to play a precise role. I want this idea of playing roles to be the theme of the manga. A telling example is that of Tom Cruise. I watched all his movies, and most of the times when he's on screen, he's visibly comfortable. But if we look a little at his private life, which is a facet of him very little known in Japan, he's a very controversial person. He's very focused on Scientology, which displeases a lot of people. Even knowing this, Tom Cruise on screen remains a good-looking man. So even when having a negative image of the actor, we can ignore it when he plays the part of a character, and then find it classy anyway. This is what I want for the characters of Fire Punch. Tell us about your words at the end of each volume. They are somewhat enigmatic. What I write at the end of each volume is, "but lies." Fire Punch talks about acting, of lying, so I wanted to keep that up in the physical book too. I know many authors use that section to reveal parts of their private life, but I work all of my time, so I don't have much to reveal. It's pure fiction. I'm amused people try to decrypt those. Since there is barely a sane character in Fire Punch, Nanato being the only one, the dialogue is always surprising. Like when Tagata first meets the half-naked woman who speaks English. Kano mesui no wa dare desu ka? Do you speak English? Are you a bitch? Besides exposition and characterization, dialogue helps Fujimoto in several ways. For example, to break the fourth wall. Through this "bun" sound Tagata makes, he skips parts of the story that would be boring for the audience, advancing seamlessly into the next and more interesting scene of the movie. A trick Fujimoto takes advantage of by letting the manga follow Tagata's direction. This happens when he jumps immediately to the training arc after the beach episode, or when he arrives in Behendog to explain his plan to kill and betray Agni. The dialogue in Fire Punch is uncaring of being offensive with its vulgar language, which is also a symptom of humanity's moral decadence. Dick is a word that Takata likes to use a lot, and it's no coincidence. Moreover, during Agni's training, the conversation focuses on how his flaming dick is supposed to work during masturbation, followed by many other questions of similar intellectual depth. But dialogue is also a form of realism, a way to report the state of the world and its ignorance, the preoccupying lack of education with its repercussions. So when Agni asks Tagata what space is, or when, much later in the story, San proves Agni's divinity through apparently scientific facts, Fujimoto wants to show how much knowledge has been lost in this dystopic world. One more example. After Behamdog's slaves have settled in a new village, following the city's destruction, and dedicate themselves to worshipping God Agni, their savior from Judas lies, Tagata's secret is exposed by Batman. That's what he calls this guy, because he has a bat as his signature weapon. Anyway, this leads to Tagata leaving, even if that implies he won't be able to film the movie anymore. After chasing the friend for long, Agni convinces Tagata to come back with him, not before an interesting dialogue with its focus on the existence of the Ice Witch that Tagata denies. Here, an insulting contest begins, though Agni's vocabulary is pretty limited, which is quickly called out by Togata. Not that he knows what a vocabulary is anyway, so they start insulting each other by saying the word stupid. Each reply has one more stupid in it, until Agni starts struggling to keep the count, and makes a mistake repeating the word the same number of times as Togata's last response. This is a perfect representation of ignorance through a funny dialogue. Other times, a monologue may be confirmation of a core message of the story, but the topic is premature now. I'm not trying to abruptly change the tone of my story or break the rhythm by injecting humor. My change of tone comes first and foremost through the intervention of a disruptive character. It's the case, for example, of Togata, which from the point of their arrival in the story brings that absurd touch. Does the character of Togata, the crazy cinephile of Fire Punch, resemble you? Not really. I feel closer to Agni or Denji from Chainsaw Man, especially their masochist tendencies, which translate in their submission to insane female characters, like Togata and Makima. Absurd is a proper adjective to describe the dialogue in Fire Punch. Having lost all of his movies because of Behendog, Togata reveals that he's been trying to kill himself, as a life without his story ain't shit, coming from a 300-year-old man. Or, right after making up with the friend, not before insulting each other for a while, Agni and Togata sit down, exhausted from walking the entire night. The two enjoy a moment of relaxation in the midst of the snow. Agni finally shares his story. Togata would like to do the same, but he cannot remember his past, because living for too long erases emotions and memories. Just when he finally opens up and shares his weaknesses. Until that point, buried under countless lies. So he just starts talking about the plot of Star Wars. There is a scene which takes place not long after this episode. When Agni claims the first tree originated from Judah, the dialogue is interesting to say the least. Agni promises to kill Judah, that begs him to kill her, while Surya orders Judah to kill Agni. Fire Punch is a funny but serious story, so surreal that anything can happen. Like someone filming a person's revenge when the world is ending, and that person even goes along with it, like a random pyramid in the middle of a desert of snow, like Luna trying so many clothes. Where did they all come from? Wait, Luna is alive? Fire Punch is delirious, absurd. But what's even more absurd are the 10 years that follow the fall of Judah's tree and the revival of Luna. Although, now it is necessary to take a few steps back to Togata and his secret, after some clarification. Through the comedic portrayal of a surreal and dystopic reality, with Behendog as capital and Agni as climax of the search for meaning in life, Fujimoto explores major themes that affect the human condition, like religion, education, and happiness. In literature, the genre that analyzes by twisting those topics is absurdism. 6 are the main characteristics of this school of thought, which shouldn't sound too unfamiliar reached this point of the analysis. Irrational logic. Some absurdist elements do not make immediate sense to the reader, and events or scenes might seem out of order, surreal, or inscrutable. Existential topics. Absurdist fiction might explore life after death, what it means to be a human being, or the complexities of moral good and evil. Dark humor. Absurdism will often make light of vulgar or taboo topics, or aim to intentionally provoke the reader with themes of violence, sexuality, or death. Satire. It's common to see social criticism in the form of comedy that makes fun of society. Nihilism. Characters will often find no purpose in human life and will debate the meaninglessness of religion and morality. Meta-narrative. The author is seen more as a constructor of this story, and the audience is no passive spectator, but a co-constructor that has to interact with the writer and find the text's final meaning. Only that there is not just one writer in Fire Punch, and if that sounds absurd, how about believing a cinema the afterlife? Isn't the ending absurd? What about a man trapped in the body of a woman, or not letting people be themselves? Agni has been chasing him for a while. He'd be lost without the person he considers his older sister, who's shooting him and even throwing snowballs. But nothing seems to work. It's only when hearing those fantastic stories of his that Agni forgets the pain. It's the exact same of when he would talk to Luna to distract her from the awfulness of the world. They've been walking the entire night, and it'll be dawn soon. Agni wants to understand what's gotten into Tagata, but it's also true that he needs his help to take care of the agonists, as he just cannot have it anymore of so many people dying in front of him. The pain of his flames, the hate for Doma, he can bear them, but not death. What did you think when he said I was a man? Tagata asks. After Agni replies that even if for a second he did have doubts about their gender, Tagata explains he hates that split-second doubt as much as Agni hates seeing people die. But he could never understand. How could something as absurd as having the brain of a man in the body of a woman be even real? The voice too is feminine. Every morning, Tagata wakes up and is reminded of reality. It makes him sick to the stomach, and the fact that Agni is naked with his penis hanging between his legs does not help at all. It's all a matter of appearance, and what makes Tagata feel even sicker is having to go along with it. Even Agni fell for his own looks as a hero, or for Judas resembling Luna. Tagata is on his knees. Nobody would like to see him this way. Everybody wants the funny, crazy, and female version of Tagata. But here he is, lost his mind, once again. He doesn't even remember who the real him is anymore. Tagata's very existence is possibly the most absurd element of Fire Punch, seeing his conflicting relationship with the author that constantly breaks the fourth wall. As a character who escapes the creator's control, Tagata is simultaneously director of Fire Punch, cameraman, audience, editor, writer, narrator, actor, critic, and even the one dude who spoils everything. I like domineering and irrational women. In college, there was this girl who was mean to me. Then, one day at school my bicycle had fallen over. I was wondering what happened when she said, "I knocked your bike over, ha ha ha." I was so happy. She was into you, wasn't she? Not at all, but I really like girls like that. And from reading your manga, I thought you also like that kind of girls. I like women who are mentally superior to men. Right, I want to have women in higher positions than men. So that's how you get a monster like Tagata. From choosing the name for his movie, that's it. I got it. Fireman. To taking care of the camera, with Fujimoto gladly leaving him the job, Tagata puts his own spin on the narrative and breaks the fourth wall countless times. The character goes as far as embodying the audience itself when he complains that everybody has the regen blessing during the fight on Behendog's train. Same happens sometime later in the beach episode, when he hears and is moved by Agni's backstory. On the same occasion, Tagata also plays the role of actor by entering the scene and talking to the main character of the film. Instead, when he cuts tedious parts out with that boon sound, he acts as the editor of the manga. With his visit to Judah meant to betray Agni and make the villain win, what he's actually doing is directing and writing this story. Though, more importantly, sometime later, Tagata spoils the movie and ruins Fujimoto's plans. When he reveals that there is no eye switch and that Behendog's religion is fake, he basically exposes the illusory plot of Fire Punch. Funny that this secret is unveiled after going through an invisible wall, revealed by a magical word of a certain franchise. But that's not all, because he also spoils part of the themes from the second half of the manga, that is, the real plot, when he talks about religion and education. In particular, he likes the idea of creating a common enemy and manipulating religion to rule over people. An uneducated and despaired world won't just believe lies, it will first and foremost want to believe them. The conflict between the author and this character is the most evident when the former, doing his best to work around the spoilers, makes the fake eye switch appear. But sometimes it's not enough. When Tagada tells Agni that he should hate Doma and care about nothing else, or have hallucinations, here he's not simply writing Fireman's character, but Fire Punch's too, since those happen to be actual traits of the manga's protagonist, confusing the movie with reality, with what Fujimoto is writing. As another example, after the beach episode, telling Judah not to look back until the end of the tunnel isn't just orchestrating a movie scene, it's actually an order the character in the manga ends up obeying. Is it clear yet? A character from the manga is writing the manga himself. Tagada literally breaks and makes Fire Punch. Actually, he doesn't even seem to like the title, just as he doesn't adore some characters' names, like Nenato, as if questioning Fujimoto's choices. The introduction of the manga, it was him narrating it all along. The finale, he spoiled it, when he said this story wouldn't have a good ending, but maybe it was just another of his lies. The last chapters of Fire Punch convene a metaphysical spirit close to 2001, A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. What were your intentions with this conclusion? Indeed, I had 2001 in mind, but also the end of the TV series Evangelion, where we see Shinji sitting on a chair while outside humanity is dying and being reborn. I think I want to express my relationship to space and cinema in the same manner. Fire Punch is a manga in which it is difficult to detect a glimmer of hope, but I'll make sure to give it a happy ending. You evoked Evangelion, a series which became the source of many interpretations, often wrong. In Fire Punch, when you're having fun giving pseudo-symbolic names to your characters, are you like Hideaki Anno, manipulating potentially cryptic concepts just for the form? Yes, I'm trying to reach that effect. I don't grant too much importance to symbolism. A name is a name. As an example, if I choose to give a biblical name to a character, that doesn't mean they will end up like in the texts. I'll always remember the opening of Evangelion, during which the Tree of Life appears for a moment, and that led numerous viewers to think deep and believe mystical things were going on, when in reality, this tree has no connection to this story. Truth, hallucinations, dreams, memories, delusions, lies, they can't be taken at face value, just like Agni. Is he really a god? Everybody judges him from his inextinguishable flames and perfect body, from having descended from the sky back in Behendog. But it's all thanks to his regenerative curse. Just like Tagata, whose identity everyone bases simply on the way he appears outside. But the truth is that Tagata is a man, helplessly and forever condemned to be trapped in a female and constantly regenerating body, to think of himself as a woman. He will never be the person he wants to be. The conflict between true and false, between lies and reality, is a war with no end in Fire Punch. One tries to subjugate the other. Sometimes, one becomes the other, in a never-ending cycle. The religion in Behendog was invented and supported thanks to both the ignorance and despair of the masses, but it was also a scheme to control them. Not much changed when Agni appeared and was believed to be God. People wasted no time and jumped from one belief to the other, making of a self-told lie their truth. Emphasized by the 3 movies that define the story of Fire Punch, the identity of the world and characters is unclear. If lies are real, but reality is a lie, then who is Tagata? A man or a woman? Is that Judah or Luna? Who is Agni? Is he Fireman's protagonist, the big brother, Fire Punch the Avenger, God, the devil? Is he son? Cause of the explosion of so many questions is an event that takes place after Tagata and Agni make up, the final encounter with Doma. Doma is right there. Revenge, peace, and Luna are a few steps away from Agni's Fire Punch. Just a little longer and all the pain will finally end. Agni will be able to die. Before that, as Tagata promises not to interfere, Doma asks to talk. To no surprise, Agni agrees to listen, as he's had plenty of time to think about his actions, the thousands of deaths he caused in Behendog, the people he saved there and needs to look after as their god. Plenty of time to understand that Luna will never be back. He knows that man is not fishing just for himself. What does Agni think people lack in that day and age? It's not a warm climate, or great quantities of food, or even a god. It's proper education. Tagata stops recording for a second here. What would happen if Agni suddenly died and left his people to starve without his flesh? They wouldn't die, not that easily. If Agni dies, all those people will be left with is the culture of eating others, so they'll naturally resort to cannibalism. Without proper education, it's not possible to imagine different scenarios and reason. It's lacking imagination that makes the masses adhere to a false sense of justice. Wasn't it this very false sense of justice that made Agni destroy Behendog? It was the same with Doma. Until one day spoils of war from an expedition were taken to him. Among them was something that very much resembled footage of his god, which he'd often be shown by Judah. What Doma was holding that day in his hands was a movie. Its name, Behendog. He had believed a mere actor to be God and burned people in his name. Tagata can't contain himself and beats the man. After all, the name Behendog sounded familiar, but to think they'd taken it from a movie, from one only he could still have in its original packaging. A trash movie at that. But Doma couldn't be more right. Education is fundamental in the world, and Fire Punch's dystopia only confirms that. What would desperate and uneducated people rather believe? That the world has entered a new ice age and 30 years are left at best? Or that the ice switch is the cause of everything? No person would see any hope out of the first option, so having them blindly obey an imaginary god to fight an equally imaginary enemy is a great idea, and indoctrinating them through a movie is an even greater one. Ignorance explains why, as soon as Behendog collapses, another kingdom rises, Agnism. Jumping from one religion to the other, the world is slowly reverted back and a new Behendog is created. Unable to change route, humanity is running in circles, stuck in an unbreakable loop. After the fall of Judah's tree, and during the 10 years that Luna is back alive, living in secret with Agni, far away, Sun claims he can hear the voice of God. Whispers Judah could hear too, and through his sacred scripts, Sun shapes society however he pleases. Same purpose the Behendog movie had. The only difference being that Sun is fanatical about his god who, still related to flames, now has a proper name at least, Lord Agni, sworn enemy of the new Ice Witch, thief of God and the world's flames, Judah. The old structure is perfectly replicated because of one principle. People believe in what they want, in the way they want. Even if each and every event had a rational explanation, like Agni's descent from the sky, or his flames and immortality, even the very Ice Age, people preferred to see what their despair and ignorance told them. Just like Sun, who called miracles all the coincidences in which he was saved by Agni. And a miracle is what he would have needed in the future, when by coincidence, Agni kills him. Didn't Judah's father, the founder of Behendog's religion, ask what God had whispered to her ear as his last words? Doesn't Agni believe the afterlife to be a cinema theater with Luna waiting for him there? Just because Tagata jokingly told him so, when he doesn't even know what an actual cinema is. Behendog is the product of despair and lack of education. Doma is only one of its victims, as he begs for mercy to Agni, whose sister he killed, and to Tagata, whose movies he burned. And forgiven he is, but... In the end, Agni couldn't forgive Doma. Prey to hallucinations, he gave in to his alter ego, Fire Punch, and as a result, even more death was brought to the world. If he didn't realize it before, he does now. Agni is the villain of this story. And if this really is a movie, it's time for the bad guy to die and give the audience their catharsis. Agni walks onto the lake where Dama was fishing just a few moments before, in hopes of drowning while reassured by the darkness of the water. So this is a cinema, he must have thought. Following Tagata's instructions, he first buys a ticket, then he gets himself some popcorn, but no drink, or he'll have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the movie. A brochure for the film he's going to see will also do no harm. Finally, after entering the theater, he only has to find his seat. But the ticket for the cinema is not his. It won't be Agni to sit next to Luna. The movie being played is Tagata's early life. His grandpa's there. Now he remembers where the passion for movies came from. Around that time as a kid was also when he had first desired to be a man, so that he could be like a superhero and save somebody. Cinema is of colossal importance in Fire Punch. It's not just about the countless references, it goes beyond that. It's the role it plays. Fire Punch revolves around the constant fusion between lies and realities that exquisitely finds in a fictional story, such as a movie, the perfect synthesis. Just as Behendog's movie used to be the reason for pain and injustice, just as it was Star Wars' fault that Luna died, or that Tagata's movie will have San clench his fist 80 years later when he watches that man on the screen burn restlessly. It was cinema that brought Tatsuki Fujimoto to write Fire Punch. It is still cinema that explains the reason to live. And at a theater, that Tagata's life ends. Usually when a character dies in a movie, they always have some parting words to impress the listener. After going through a few options, Tagata decides to go with Mother. After all, why not? It's very touching that someone would think of their mom in their final moments. Sure, a little cliché, but it works every time. Just not this time. It can't work here. He realizes. Dama is dead. The ice switch doesn't even exist. So what is Agni going to do after Tagata dies? After his bigger sister too leaves him? He cannot die. Not here and not now. Agni must keep moving on. He must live. But why? Tagata thinks for a while, and it's in his smile that the answer can be read. The destruction and reinterpretation of the superhero in Fire Punch is part of that one branch of the absurdist narrative aimed at exploring life's meaning, or perhaps the lack of. Even if equipped with his own costume, Agni is no hero, just a tormented individual who's grown physically a man but stayed a kid mentally, bringing the entire world down with him because of a single person's death. Throughout this story, Agni only grows more miserable and regretful of his actions, and the few times his old self resurfaces to hold him accountable for his decisions, Luna saves him, stopping but for a moment his ever stronger wish to die. So no matter how many times he attempts to suicide, he keeps reviving. In desperate need of a hero, Agni has forced himself to act like one, eventually losing his person in a new identity he could no longer back out of once his surroundings too started depending on it. And just like Tom Cruise in his movies, Agni eventually became only what the world saw from the outside. Unable and, more importantly, unwilling to be himself. Ever since the day his village burned, Agni has let the others decide who he should be as a coping mechanism to reject Luna's death. only that, in the meantime, he also kept rejecting all the opportunities that presented themselves to move on and build a new life with a new family. It seems that, while those who had the strength to forgive Fire Punch and leave the pain in the past wished for his happiness, he did not, preferring to stay a depressed and loving devil, a villain afraid of leaving the comfort found in the dark warmth of his flames. Since I believe it's only the surface of the skin, I thought that if I was going to do a hero story, I had to rethink its structure. The so-called hero is a very sad and flawed person. That's why being worshipped as an idol is depicted as a horror in Fire Punch. Those who are regarded as heroes have a stronger impression of being forced to be than being a hero. However, I think they are people who lack something. Many consider Agni an icon, but for me, he is not. I think it is important that he suffers, but even more, that he has a sense of sacrifice and that he is conflicted. Agni is certainly the main character, but certainly not a hero. The same goes for Fire Punch. I think it's a manga that, from the outside, looks like a superhero series, but in terms of content, it's quite the opposite. The title makes sense as the plot progresses. Moreover, compared to Marvel comics, the heroes in DC comics are more realistic to me. That's why I like them a lot more. Carrying sadness, there are many characters who are portrayed as criminals, and no matter how hard they try, they cannot live normally. The protagonist of the movie American Sniper is an actual soldier who went to war in Iraq and was praised as a legendary hero, but he was called a demon by the enemies and even had a bounty on his head. Although he suffered from a heart attack, he still set foot on the battlefield 4 times. After watching the movie, I couldn't help but notice. The hero will stand up and continue fighting no matter how many times. Is this really such a beautiful thing? After thinking about it, it finally hit me. The most correct way to end a hero story. I think the hero should give up being a hero. In the 10 years that follow after the fall of Judas Tree at the hands of Agni, or rather, his Fire Punch, event that takes place immediately after Tagada's devastating death, Agni experiences the saddest period of his existence, forced to live on despite wishing for death more than ever. Even if Luna is back alive, depression has never had a tighter grip on his heart. Agni is living in an absurd lie. Ironic, as he's always been good at acting. The times he told Luna of when he'd bath in the river, or when he would smile to her, everything was so painfully fake. But it was all for her. She was the fuel of his life. And he'd promised her to travel the world together. He'd promised he would live. So when Agni wakes up ashore, as the frozen sea has melted beneath the burning tree, a miracle happens. Maybe, just maybe, by killing Judah, Luna will be reborn out of that body. Why not? But he cannot bring himself to take her life, and as his tears flow, they're caught by her hand. While Judah dances on the beach together with the snow and the ashes falling from the night sky, as if rediscovering the world, Agni notices something. That person has lost her memories, and he too lost something, his flames. With the realization that only by lying to himself there can be happiness, at last the two siblings reunite. Agni tells the woman she is his sister Luna. Daring to live beside kids who used to be Doma students, Agni has reached the lowest point in his life. He has grown apathetic to the cold of the earth, to the warmth of someone else's body. He can no longer sleep or eat. True that he hasn't done so in forever, but it's mainly because he's died inside too many times. He can't smile. He can't feel anything. Nothing. He's numb to everything that makes a person feel alive. But he can't even be considered a person anymore, as not to face reality. He pretends to have forgotten what identifies an individual. His name. The pain is beyond imagination. Even if he tries suiciding over and over, like a curse, that one word keeps bringing him back to life. And if it wasn't enough, even this Luna tells him to live, saving him multiple times from drowning. Charmed by the serenity he would finally achieve, dissolving into the ocean. Life was better before. At least, the pain was real. It's his fault Tagata died and Behendog burned. That one's not Luna. He's killed this girl's sister, this girl's family, and hers too. It's his fault that Dama's daughter is carrying a child. He's become the nemesis he so despised, another Dama. This life is a pure act. Agni should die. 10 years pass. With time, Luna has come to love this man who claims to be her brother. He protects her, he shares his worries and asks for advice. At least, Agni is not alone anymore, because Luna is there for him. And more importantly, she wants him to live. But why? Why does he have to? He's been meaning to ask for so long. Because she just wants him to. Something gets warmer in her chest whenever he crosses her mind. If he were to die, she wouldn't be able to live on. In fact, how could she love her big brother this much and not remember him? This sad miracle eventually comes to an end. So when Judah regains her memories and erases Agnes, creating a second tree while burying his old body under the roots, she sacrifices herself for a single man she's come to love truthfully, wishing for his happiness, even if the seed of their love was born of only a lie. I remembered back to the first time I told a lie. It was when I was 7. I think we'd just run out of food. Both mother and father ate so little. Noticing that, Luna and I made an effort to follow their example. One day, mother found out we'd stopped eating properly. Her expression was that of anger and sorrow, and, as if to apologize, she told us to stop being considerate and to eat lots in order to grow big and strong. Luna cried at the thought of being yelled at, but I told a lie, not wanting mother to worry about us. We found potatoes up in the mountains, so Luna and I ate them together. That's why we're not hungry, I told her. After that, I was speaking to Luna in bed before sleeping. It turns out we'd actually found potatoes in the mountains and eaten them. I can't remember where and how we'd found them, but I was convinced we'd actually eaten them together. I chuckled at Luna, whose stomach was bulging with potatoes, despite never actually eating any. We could never sleep well due to the hunger, so Luna and I would always talk the night away. But for some reason, that day, Luna and I fell fast asleep. It's been 80 years, and at the tree's foot, the earth is once again warm. Agni has been given a new name by Nanato, personally asked by Judah to make him happy in exchange for becoming the tree, so that he could live a life according to his rules, free to become what he and not the others wanted. His name is now Sun. A cinema theater has been built by Nanato on top of the fertile land, even though there has been no movie to play. There is still something lingering on Sun's mind, the memory of always being in the chase of something in the past, but that is a secret Nanato takes in her grave. All alone again, he keeps suiciding in vain, as, for some reason, he keeps on resuscitating, until an old camera is retrieved from some excavations. The movie is badly damaged, with no colors or sound, but this story, even if messy, is clear in one thing. The Burning Man seemed to be the main character, because the movie was entirely focused on him. Sometimes he'd be fighting something, kill it, and then get killed, over and over. Still, through the duration of the movie, that man kept burning. Before he knew it, Sun found himself with a clenched fist. There is still one question left to answer. Why live? Why live when all that life restlessly has to offer is tragedy after tragedy after tragedy? When the only certainty in Agni's life was death. Challenging a frozen world, Agni searched far and wide for warmth, but what his journey quickly turned into was an endless chase for a miracle. Throughout his existence, he never stopped believing Luna could still be alive, accepting any impossible lie, even for one more breath, because there isn't really a way to stop love or madness, not even the incandescence of undying flames. And sometimes, those lies he welcomed with open arms turned into miracles. After all, wasn't Agni a miracle himself, forever on fire and immortal? Despite desiring death, while ironically unable to die, and unsure if simply undead rather than alive, Agni brought the entire world down with him, devouring an endless amount of lives the more he'd be consumed by the last word of a single person. Still, even when the weight of his curse was at its heaviest, he kept on burning. Until another miracle. Millions of years after the destruction of the Earth, when all that's left is a tree of cosmic size, feeding on stars and planets, Sun finds his way into its core, where someone is left. Someone who's barely kept the awareness of existing, laying in wait of disappearing along the dark and cold nothingness of the universe. Her name is Luna. The two spoke together for a while, before he fell asleep. Not long after, she too fell asleep. One knew in his previous life to have been chasing someone, but who? The other remembered someone was connected to this tree, but who? Why live? Because life is a movie, and miracles are more common than one would imagine. The dead wouldn't want the living to die along with them, no matter how blazing the flames or freezing the world, how comforting a dream or hopeless reality. There is catharsis to be found somewhere. All that's needed is to keep on burning, even if it takes climbing a tree of galactic size, because there will eventually be a split second worth millions of years. Live.